remember how long we've been doing this June meeting with our clients to go over preparation for the audit, and some of my staff are saying, well, since I've been here, 6 to 8 years, I'm like, no, it was way longer than that. But the idea came to us to hold a meeting for our clients and talk about all the things we had to talk about. Over the years, there were not as many new things happening as there have been in the last 5 years. And I was relating to Derek that, 1 year I said to Joanne Gilman, we really don't have anything new, so we were thinking we won't do it this year. And she said, oh, no, you have to. We only do audit once a year. We need the reminders. Every time we talk, we make notes of things that may not be in the forefront of our minds. So we are recording the presentation today. So if anybody has questions, can you raise your hand and we'll give you the microphone so that they come up on the recording. We would appreciate that. And then the reason why we're here and the reason why we do this is because we really do care about our clients, every single one of you, and we try to meet all of your needs. So we're going to start with all the topics that may seem redundant. We're trying to put a lot into 2 hours, and then at the end, I'm doing the survey that we put out, because the survey is just to us. We know what didn't go so well last year, but we value your input. We value your teamwork and partnership with us. And I'm sure that this year is going to be a whole lot better than last year. It's going to be a really great year. So who's starting off today? Valerie. Oh, please, let me introduce everyone. So partners of the firm, we have Heidi Woolen, we have Mon Lee, Valerie Dolan, and we have Principal Brian Coe. And I'm Kathy Mansell. I'm one of the partners with Nisivoccia. So with that, I'll pass it off to Valerie.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to come. I'm going to cover the piece that everybody always says that, I always think that it's probably the most boring part of it, but I guess it's probably the most informative for a lot of people. We're really going to talk about the key things that we need to get an audit done. What we've learned over time, and we've been at this a long time, is there's a lot of things that we need to do an audit. You all are very busy doing the audit, like Joanne said, when it's once a year. It's very difficult to kind of put together and remember all the things that we do. So each of you received a packet by district when you came in, and in that packet I have a number of things for you. And in that packet, I have them printed for you right now, but I'll just tell you, if you want them in digital form or if you want them in any kind of Excel, Word, we have them. We will gladly send them over to you, but I've just printed a copy to give everybody a refresher as to what we need. Included in there is we have what we, there's fraud questionnaires. Additionally, this year we added something new to the packet, which are, we printed out what we call a systems description. Now, we pulled them from we had to pull them from your client. However, these probably are not perfect. And so what we're asking each district is to go through them and read through the procedures. And please edit them to how you're actually performing procedures and procedures for things like cash receipts, payroll, purchasing. The reason why we asked was twofold. Number one, a number of you have changed processes over the last couple of years. So we haven't done a full update in several years. And a lot of people are changing softwares. They're changing software packages. So we might be giving you a list that that was in the file that might be CDK, and now you're with Genesis. So we want to make sure we get you the most up-to-date information. And additionally, there's a new accounting standard that we have to do under the risk standards, which is a new risk standard for the way we assess the establishment and we assess risk for the audit. I need that information on the front end now so that I can go through. So this one it's in there. It's called system descriptions, and feel free to change anything you want on these. And that's why I said, if you want them in Word, feel free, ask us, we can give them to you. Additionally, I have a list in every one of the packets for all of the reports and things that we have provided that we will need. A number of those reports are similar, but like I said, if you have changed softwares, you might have the wrong one. Just let us know when we send you the right one to make sure that the reports are the appropriate reporting. Additionally, we have the statistical section. That's another one of those big sections in the J's. Fortunately, it's gotten a little bit easier because we can find some of the information online now, but we haven't been able to find everything. So especially those back J's. So once you get into the J15, they become the operating statistics of the district. We need that information from the district. So we definitely want to make sure if you can get that information to us. Included in the ACFR are 2 letters that actually have updates by the district. One of them is the introductory letter. So you have a copy of your letter from last year. That is your letter to include. There's a whole big section called major initiatives. Tell us what happened. That's really your time to speak about what happened in the district or what's coming is in the MD&A. We will give you new numbers and go through certain pieces of that MD&A as we're finishing the audit. But there are other sections about budgetary highlights. There are sections about factors that are bearing on the future and things that are planned. Are we talking about going out for a referendum? Are we going to be selling some debt after June 30th? That information can be compiled and put together ahead. Fixed assets. So now what I want to cover, and I've always covered these other things that take a really long time and really do hold up the audit. It's kind of funny, there's a few things, everyone's so focused on getting board secretary's reports and getting completion reports and everything. And there's this whole section in the ACFR that the way the ACFR is written, that if we don't have this information, we actually can't complete your audit. We can't, it changes so many data and so many locations within your audit. The first one being fixed assets. So obviously, number one, make sure your fixed asset inventory is updated and getting ready to go. We've also said if you're utilizing an appraisal company to do your fixed assets, obviously they're looking in the same window we are, and every district in New Jersey is trying to get it all done. If you want to send it to them, you know, if it's not sent, send it as soon as you can, because the sooner you get that information to that outside appraisal company, the sooner you're going to get your report back for the audit. We always are waiting for reporting and we're waiting for fixed assets. So please, if you can get that to them. Make sure obviously we're tracking story under GASB 34 still, so you have thresholds of what you're doing. Key piece of your fixed assets, if you're sending it either in-house or fixed assets to an appraisal company, if you're putting on additions, how does that tie back to your expenditures? Does that make sense? Are you capturing all the expenses in Fund 12? If you're not capturing the expenses, let us know what ones you're not picking up as assets. We have a number of districts that don't choose, even though it's 12, all the architectural fees, they don't pick them up. Just tell us that we're not including those items. Or we've chosen to not include them. And then additionally, Fund 30, all of those Fund 30 expenses, especially there's a number of districts with a lot of referendum money and ROD grants and all that stuff that's happening. Those projects are more or less ongoing. So that's construction in progress, not necessarily fixed assets but we need to know that information. So when you look at your expenses in Fund 30, please let us know if there's any ongoing projects and if they are construction. Like I said, please give us, and make sure when you give us your deletions, they are supported by board resolution. So when you give us your deletions report and we're looking in your appraisal report, we need to see all the resolutions where you actually disposed of that in minutes and was approved. You'd be surprised sometimes we don't find those pieces, probably because a lot of times assets get and they're really supposed to be approved. So if you know you're disposing of large assets, try to help us track down those resolutions if you can. Compensated absences. So this was another area that always holds us up because it does tie with your financial statements. So we always say you need to prepare a list of compensated absences that needs to be available when we come to do the audit. Also, you have to, under GASB 34, segregate those compensated absences by function so that they get reported in the district-wide properly. And the piece that we have to look at also is all of the accruals and all of the retirements. So any of the changes. So please, when you generate, a lot of softwares generate that report, look at it for reasonableness. Look at beginning, where did I start in my audit last year? And now I'm ending here, and is it correct? I mean, sometimes we've gotten those reports and they're tens of millions of dollars have changed. Sometimes it turns out to be a formula error. There was a comma got in the wrong place, or something major changed. We've changed the policy, we've changed the procedure. I am going to stop because this one here has a new GASB for requirements. So I'm going to let my partner Mon speak. I'm here to bring the good news. And the bad news. So I know we're all sick of using ASPE standards, including myself, all very sick of it. The good news is in this, it's not effective until June 30th of 2025 year end. Unfortunately, it's a retroactive treatment, meaning that there's a restatement requirement. Meaning you have to do a look back as to what the numbers were then last year under this new standard. So our recommendation is, instead of doing it, calculate it the way that you've always done it. This year, and then having to do it next year twice, because you're gonna have to do your liability calculations of 6/30/25, and then go back and do it as a 6/30/24. We would just recommend that you just, you know, comply with the new standard this year so that you don't have to do double work. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about comp absences. It's nothing new. And we're all familiar with it. We've always reported it, but there's a little bit of change, and I know that every district calculates it a little differently. You know, we have some districts that includes everybody on the list. And then do a probability calculation. Let's say that this group of employee that has, you know, for example, 1 to 5 years of experience, they have a 25% likelihood of, you know, making it to the end when they're eligible. And then this group has this percentage. So what the new standard does that is requiring you to calculate a probability, because some of school districts, they calculate it, they only include people on the comp absences list if they're eligible. And then the other piece that's different too with how we're calculating, some districts will include a FICA piece in it in the calculation, and some districts don't. So that under the new standard, it's requiring you to calculate a FICA piece in there. So comp absences, I have a definition here. Like I said, it's really nothing new. A comp absence is defined as leave for which employees receive any combination of following. You have cash payments when leave is used for time off, cash payment for unused leave upon termination, or non-cash settlement, such as a conversion to a post-employment benefits plan. So examples here, I'm sure you're all familiar with vacation leave, sick leave, paid time off, holidays, parental leave, certain sabbatical leave. You know, the sabbatical leave one, it's really not, I wouldn't think it would be applicable for school districts. That's more for like colleges and universities. Yes.
I'm sorry, you said
Give me
that.
the mics, since we're recording.
On the previous slide, you had that cash payments when leave is used for time off. If leave is used for time off, then you just get the regular pay. We're trying to count that what they get paid for that day they have off.
So I'm gonna go a little bit. I'm gonna go a little bit more into that. So under a new standard, it kind of defines when a liability should be accrued. So under these two circumstances, when you have unused leave that hasn't been used but earned, and then you have leave that has been used but hasn't been paid yet out. Okay, so for unused leave, there's 3 criteria that you have to meet, meaning number 1 is that leave is earned. They call that, you know, cumulative services already rendered, so they have to have earned it. The leave accumulates and that it carries over. So let's say that if your policy, your board policy or your contract, negotiated contract says that you have vacation time, you know, everybody's allowed to earn, let's say 15 days of vacation time, but if it's
you either use it or lose it, then it doesn't qualify because it doesn't carry over into the next period. So there's no criteria for you to have to count the liability for that. But if you do, your district does allow for you to accumulate vacation time, and it does carry, and they're eligible to be paid out at a certain point, whether it's you giving them the time off or you paying paying them out in cash, then, excuse me, I'm gonna tap my slide. Then you need to consider that as part of your calculation. So this goes back to the new standard talks about the likelihood of using the leave. So this goes back to what I was talking about before, right? Some district, a lot of districts just put in, well, if they're eligible, I'm gonna include them on the list. If they're not, then not. Or there's variations, but I think, they're talking to Kathy at one point, she said that, well, all districts used to do this in, I guess years ago, where they have to factor in the likelihood. So under new standard, it talks about you have to kind of look at historically, what's the trend of people being paid out. Let's see. Brian, can you skip to the next slide first? Okay, so I'm a little bit of an example here. So what I was talking about before, obviously this is just made up. You can change it depending on how you feel your district usually, historically has performed, so to speak, right? So let's say that if your employee, you have a group of employee that has 1 to 5 years of experience, so their liability, you're supposed to take 25% of that. And then if you have employees with 6 to 10 years of experience in the district, 50% of that. Like I said, these are just made up numbers to show us an example, but this is kind of the gist of it. The standard requires you to calculate the likelihood of when the leave will be used or be paid out. And also under the new standard, they say that the employee's pay rate as of the date of the financial statement should be used to calculate the liability. Or if you have something in the contract that says that, well, it's sick leave is calculated as 50% of the pay rate. I know I've seen those instances, or it's capped at a certain percentage. Obviously, you have to follow the standard, but also you have to factor in what's in your policies and what's in your contracts as well. So a lot of it you're already doing, but this just adds another component where you have to factor in the probability and also add in payroll taxes related expenses, which means like that. So I would just go to make it easy. Once you calculate everything, just apply 7.65% to the bottom line. Any questions so far? Okay. The paperwork one, I'm trying to see if I can find it. Okay, I mean, the standards, it talks about, some of the exceptions. If you have, for example, leave that's dependent upon a sporadic event. So some entity or some district, and I think it's, for example, like sabbatical leave for university, you're not going to recognize that until it happens, right? Same thing with maternity, you're not going to recognize it when until it happens. Another exception is if you have unlimited leave. I don't know who really have unlimited leave here, and then holiday. Usually, I think with our school districts, holidays, you take it or most people take it, so usually there is no liability for that. So that's it. And then just to refresher on the two other
I just wanted to ask if you, like our administrator group has the ability to sell back so many vacation days per year, would there be a different probability? Because this just assumes regular retirement, would we apply something different if they could say sell back 5 or 6 days per year?
I guess my question would be, if they're allowed to sell it back to you, you encumber the amount of the, like, I don't know how you do it, like, at the end, at 6:30, they had to tell you, oh, I'm gonna sell you back 5 days, or whatever days, right? So I would assume that once you calculate that, it's will be removed from the liability calculation, CapEx liability calculation, and you probably encumber the funds, as probably like a payroll PO or something like that, so it probably wouldn't factor in here. But then if you're allowing them to carry it over, obviously then you need to factor that in. Any other questions? Is it the mic? Alright. So I just wanna, give a refresher on 87 and 96. I think a lot of you are just familiar with leases at this point, and not a lot of school districts do have any material leases, so I didn't include any specific slides here. But if anybody is interested, I can, we can forward those slides separately. So leases has to do with if you for example, rent part of your building to somebody or from somebody. Or in a situation with the towns, for example, a lot of times have cell tower leases. So, but we don't find that there's a lot of those situations with our, or bus lease, but then it depends on what your plan is, right? So basically, under 87, they just made a change that what used to be capital leases, so the things that you are paying for and at the end of the day you're gonna own, are now considered finance purchases. And then what used to be known as operating leases, like your copiers, for example, is now considered under this new standard leases. And then for 96, I know everybody had fun putting together the list from last year, so I think the hard work is done, because you already have the list from last year, just really need to update the list from last year to this year. If there's any changes, additions, deletions, so I would recommend, because the Sabitas, like it took so long last year because it's just, there's so many, I would suggest getting an early start on it, on updating. So that's it for me.
Okay, so the topic of GASB 87 and 96 is when you provide us with the list of the agreements that you have, and last year we took a very proactive approach, saying put them all in there on the way that you can extract them into that spreadsheet that we developed, because each year we have to look at it. So you'll tell us, these are the lease agreements we have, we're a lessor or we're a lessee. These are the subscription agreements that we have. Each year we have to read through the minutes. If we have access to your software and we can look for repetitive payments, we have to do our job. We have to do due diligence. Just because you told us this is what we have, we have to make sure that your list is complete and that we don't see anything that would add to that. So again, partnering together, if you had, some districts put together a lot of agreements that were small in nature and or did not exceed the 365 days. Each year that has to be evaluated. So we don't know that because last year you had 60 agreements that weren't material or didn't exceed 365 days. You still need to know that continues this year, that those are the same criteria.
I just want to revert back a little bit to what Juan said about the compensated absences. So as she said, this is going to be the learning year, because that's the way I was looking at it is, yeah, you're going to have to do it under the new standard for next year and then restate last year. So I almost felt like this is the one where, as you're working through setting it up this year, this is probably the year for us to figure out all the kinks and figure out all the bumps along the way, so that when it comes time to do it under the real standard next year, we actually have a plan, because it's going to take a little bit of time for you to sort of look at these evaluations and figure out how we're going to do it. And also, I did not include in the packets, but if anybody wants their lease paperwork, the spreadsheets that we have, or their Sabita spreadsheet that you provided us last year, that, to save you time, we'll gladly send those files back to you so that you can then update them for the current year. Just let us know and we'll gladly send those over to you. So also in your packets, like I said before, is we have the J schedules, which is your operating statistics. We used to ask for a lot more information. Now we're just really down to the district's information on operations, which is obviously your J15 of your top 10 taxpayers. Sometimes we can get that from the towns for you, sometimes we can't. If you're a large regional district, it's really hard to track them all down. So anything you can do to ask for them. Obviously, and then come the others, but that's all information about your district. And hopefully you have your full-time equivalence information, you have your operating statistics, your school business your school building information, and you have your insurance schedule. There's one there, a lot of people just take that J20 and send it straight to their insurance agent and say, update it. And the required maintenance. Now, remember that the required maintenance on the J19, I know a number of people take it from the M1, but please make sure that it ties back to this expenditure reports in your board secretary's report, because they actually have to agree to what's posted to required maintenance. Sometimes they don't always agree, and we need to make sure that they're by building, but they also agree within the report. No encumbrances. There you go. She was trying to tell you to make sure when you include them, do not include your encumbrances in that numbers you provide us to the J19. As the encumbrances roll into the subsequent year's budget and expenses. Other things, these are the ones that are beyond our control. We can't sit in this room and tell you this stuff, because again, this is the three really worst things that hold up audits. The first one is TPA on behalf pension. This one has been such a problem lately, and what it used to be is the kind of the auditor, we start doing this, and every single Friday, usually the mid-Friday of August, we have our company picnic, and our company picnic, while we're sitting at the picnic, on behalf used to come out. We haven't seen them during our picnic in several years. This is a problem. The real issue with not having on behalf when we're doing your audit is the on behalf goes on to C1. Well, that writes the whole report, which we all tell you the C1 is the most important piece. So one of these things that I know for me, can you get, like, you all can start being proponents to the county and being like, we need on behalf for our auditors. We need the on behalf for auditors. We're constantly asking, and we're asking the DOE for it, and we're getting a little bit of, but they're not releasing this information. Last year, Heidi, was September 19th. We didn't get the information we needed to write audits. Now, a number of you want summer audits, and we can't even get the information we need from the state until September. It's not gonna work, so we're asking for a little bit of help on your side. GASB 75, we all know this one takes forever and they're not coming out. 68 is out. We have 68, so GASB 68 is out, which means if GASB 68 is out, there is absolutely no reason on behalf TPAF pension can't be out, because we have 68. GASB 75 needs to come out from Division of Pensions. We haven't received that information yet. And then those little districts within Essex County that still have an Essex County pension, we didn't get this information until mid-January. Last year, it was in January. Now, I think that information came out after the deadline. Well, that's a problem for every Essex County job that has information in that pension system. So we start asking for it, but if you can be proponents and ask too, that would be a huge help. And when you're going to your county meetings, find out from the county DAs what's going on with this information. My auditors need this to file timely. I need to get that information to my auditors, so can you help us on these few? Because this has become the big three for us as problematic. Obviously, I want to go over a couple of dates, the key dates this year. Audit for 24 only is technically January 10th with an odd sum of 1/1. That is under that proposed bill that's only in the pilot program. So last year and this year they are extended. However, that's might not stay, you know, ASBO and DOE don't like these deadlines. So they're pushing to push them back into December. So all the more reason we need that information. Internally for us, we are trying to make them December 15th. We would love to be done if we could by December 15th with everybody's help to get that information. so that we can be done also, because odd sums are due on January first. Does anyone wanna come back from Christmas break and have to deal with the odd sum? That's a problem, and then there's a few others, obviously the ESER is due in March. TPAF FICA is due 10/1. That interest, that rate was 27%. Almost 50% at this point. It's almost not making sense to charge any salaries to the grants because the TPAF FICA reimbursement rate is so high, you're giving back all of the money. Obviously, your board secretaries, boards and treasurers reports, they're due 60 days after December 31st, is your December, and your June is due 8/1. Please let us know when you send those down, we do need that information, so if you know when you sent it, just track it or give us an email, however you have, to tell us when you file those, we're required to document that you timely filed those two reports. Like I said, the odd sum is January 1st. Couple of pieces about the odd sum. There's also this information for odd sum. There's two pieces to the odd sum now. We do our piece, and then as you all know, there's a piece that you have to do by building. That information does not have to be waited for the auditors. So if you know you have to do your building by building and the odd sum is released and opened, you can go in and start your side anytime that program is open. It does not have to wait for us to populate you first, especially with those deadlines in December and that January 1st filing date for the odd sum. I don't want to have giving you an odd sum on, say, December 20th, and you have 3 days or 5 days to get it all on your allocated by your facilities. As soon as the program is open, you are able to go in there. It won't do the cross check between any issues until we populate. But I feel like dealing with those problems would be easier than having you start from scratch, especially in some districts that have a large number of facilities. That's a very time consuming information. And then it is also, as we always say, once we send that information to you, it is really important that you review the data. We do provide you with a printed copy to make sure, usually when we send you the draft of that odd sum, and check it line by line, because as you all know, you won't know that there's a problem on the odd sum until you get your software budget uploaded. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't even have this program, and it was just a drop on the line. And so we always ask, please, please, please review that to make sure that you won't have a problem when you get to your budget side. And then, like I said, it's once again, at least now it's online through homeroom. It is a little easier if you're an old at this for a long time. You remember how bad it used to be through the old DOE program. At least with homeroom, submission is a little bit easy. So obviously we have an OFAC Act for reporting. So we do provide you with all of those documents for that reporting. The reporting packages have to be submitted by February 5th. That's actually based off of the December 10th, the January 10th deadline. And so you have all of these documents. You have to obviously upload your ACFR and your AMR. You also have a data collection form, which is a little different. I mean, it is still, they were still looking for it, but a number of you that had a federal single audit, you know that part of the federal government, they took out the reporting piece. So as of right now, there still is technically no report, but you can get a couple of print screens, I guess, which is what we ended up doing in the end. Heidi, was a couple of print screens to get some information for that. Obviously, we provide you with our peer review report, and you will receive an audit synopsis and the questionnaire if you are a school-based budget. I don't think there are too many school-based budgeting that we have that we would give in that questionnaire. Obviously, we have a list of the things that we do, and then once we survive those, you will upload those. In addition, you're required to upload your own set of documents to the repository. One of them being your board resolution accepting the audit, and the corrective action plan, and the certification of the implementation of that corrective action plan. After many conversations with many people, please be very careful when writing those corrective action plans. I know a number of districts got theirs kicked back because it wasn't clear enough. It wasn't implemented, the implementation date didn't make sense. They do review those corrective action plans and have many districts go back and redo those corrective action plans. So in there, please make sure to identify your specific steps and procedures of implementation, identify a person or position who's going to make sure that is resolved, and you have to identify the time frame. If you don't have those three things, they will kick it back to you. So make sure that they're in corrective action. So then I guess we kind of jump into that was sort of like the overview of all the things we need, and are you prepared? Let's see, are we ready to do an audit? So obviously, it's time to prepare for the audit and all of these things, and we say, these are the things that you do once a year. So we try to cover them to let you know, it's only once a year that you do them. So obviously, the first thing you're gonna do is review your end of year transfers. Has every 10% transfer requirement been obtained? Did you get your county approvals if necessary? Look at between your payables and your encumbrances. Are there any encumbrances on your encumbrance report that in reality are actually accounts payables and need to be reclassified? Do you go ahead and close your general ledger? You all have different software packages. They all have different procedures in which way you have to do them. Review your board secretary's reports. Do they actually make sense? Are receivables positives? Or are they somehow a negative? Did I accrue every revenue? Have we looked at fund balances? Have we done any considerations? Obviously, it's the end of June at this point. A number of you probably all have done your transfer resolutions for your June meetings to make sure that you can transfer money into your reserves at year end and have been done. So that we can help you at the end of the year once we're finished. Budget transfers, just a little reminder of all of the transfers, because there was a pause on those transfers during the COVID years. We're back to having approvals requirements for those transfers. So just a reminder of everybody on the transfers. Accounts payables versus encumbrances. This is a question we get a lot. An accounts payable is for where goods and services have been provided and rendered and we just haven't made the payment. Versus an encumbrance for which we have something but that actually goods and services have not been provided. So you really should look at your year-end open purchase order report before you close your system and look at every one of those POs and A, is it still something that's going to happen or should I be canceling it? B, is it an accounts payable and all I haven't done and it's just gonna make my July bills list and it just hasn't been paid yet? Or is it truly an encumbrance that will be liquidated prior and in the subsequent year? Salaries and wages are not supposed to be accounts payable, are not supposed to be encumbrances, they should be accounts payables because the services have been provided. So a lot of you have, you know, some of your hourly employees might have an accrual on payroll, that type of thing. They're really payables, not encumbrances. The TPAF FICA reimbursement voucher that's due in October is technically an accounts payable. It's not an encumbrance because it's based off of that calculation. So what we ask is make sure that you look at that. I mean, at this point, the rate's out, but you haven't finalized your numbers or done that PO, but it's important in June to at least have some sort of placeholder. Think about, is it going to be in a payable? I can't tell you how many times it shows up in an encumbrance because it's recorded after the fact and it gets encumbered against the funds. But it really is a payable, and if it's in encumbrances, we have to move it to payables. It's got to be reported as payable. The other question I ask every year is to close or not close. One of the things is we just talked about, there's a ton of delays in school audits, so you don't need to wait for your audit to close. Yes, we always say, should we close before the audit or should we not? Any auditor will tell you they want their records closed. Because it's easier for me to make journal entries and give you correcting entries off of a balance sheet. If you're not closed, the first entry I'm gonna give you is a memo entry and tell you not to post it to close. And then I'm gonna give you all closing entries off of balance sheet accounts. Because obviously, you know, I can't record in your revenue and expense journals. Therefore, the only accounts I have are your balance sheet accounts to journal entry. So, and we always ask, how do you post a post-audit journal entry? Because we might not finish your audit until December and you get your entries in January. Our answer is in January. That's when you should post those audit entries. You do not have to go back to June or July and post them, because if you do, you got to retroactively reapprove all your board secretary's reports. We like to say the audit shouldn't stop the business office from conducting business. You should keep going and we're just following behind you. So make sure you do those. And obviously in the DOE audit program, which, yeah, we're getting ready to start audits, and the audit program is not out yet. We don't even know when it will be out. We're hoping July, August. It's kind of hard for us to do July and August without an audit program. So that audit program hopefully should be coming out, but we haven't even heard, have we, Heidi? No, probably early August. In that audit program that does come out, there is a sheet on there is instructions on all the things you're supposed to do for a quiz. It's in the audit program also. Make sure you communicate with your accounting software vendor. A number of times we get questions and we're like, I can tell you how to do it from an audit standpoint, but that's not the right answer. The best answer a lot of times, if you have a problem with the software or a problem with those, contact your software vendor, because they're going to tell you the right way to do it in their system. Because there are 5 or 6 different systems you all are using and they all close differently. They all do something different, they all report and do rollovers differently, so just make sure you contact your software vendor. And of course, as you're closing, if you have any questions, contact us. We will gladly help you if you're not sure if you should report something one way or another, or if this is an allowable payable at the end of the year, just call us. We are always available to help you through this process. It's just, we will come in, we don't rather us not come in after the fact and say, you didn't report this, and you didn't do this right, ask us at your process. I think that's what I'm gonna cover for now. I'm gonna turn it over to Heidi.
Hello, everybody. So I'm here to talk about 3 different topics. One of them is about the recent collaborative monitoring that went on by DOE, and as you all know, they're very, very picky when they do that. So there are some common themes. We'll probably go over every single word. Just as a reminder, to have a federal single audit, you have to have $750,000 of expenditures. A little bit of good news, in fiscal year 26, they moved the threshold to $1 million. So as part of our federal single audit, we have to do a bunch of different things. First, we have to identify type A and B programs. A program is one that's $750,000 or more, and B programs are under $750,000. But if it's below what we call a small program floor, $187,500, we generally don't test those. Then we're also, you do what we call risk assessment of the program to determine if you feel the program is risky, and there's a bunch of different factors that we consider. Then we have to determine if they have a compliance supplement. The federal government comes out with what they call a compliance supplement. It's like kind of like an audit program for each individual grant. Most of the ones that we do for the Board of Education, they do have a specific compliance supplement, and they're pretty long and involved. And then once we're done, we have to, as Val said, we do the SFSAC or data collection form, which you all have to certify, and then electronically certify that. And put a copy of in the APRA repository. So talking about collaborative monitoring findings, one of the big things is documentation, making sure you have documentation for everything, whether it's payroll, whether it's non-payroll expenses. So what I have listed here is some of the findings that they had. So this is with respect, the first one, the first bullet point has to do with payroll. So if you're not charging payroll expenses directly from the get-go to a grant, and you're classifying those expenses, you need to make sure that you have documentation. So say, for example, your transfer, you had $20,000 and it's charged to someplace in Fund 11 and you're moving it to a Fund 20 grant. You got to make sure they want to see a disbursement adjustment report. They want to see documentation. Like if you move that 20, you should be able to say $10,000 of my salary, $10,000 of Kathy's salary. They want to know those kind of details. Another one was if you have an other expense charged to the grant, you need to be able to have the purchase order, the invoice, all the supporting documentation, how it was procured, and be available for them. And then another one, and I'll talk a little bit here and a little further on, is about actual equipment. If you're buying equipment with the grant, and this in this case was on ARP ESSER, you have to, as soon as you get that in, they really want that put out and being in use by the students. In this case, it was Chromebooks within 30 days. I had never really heard of that before. This is a newer one. And then the one at the top for ARP Accelerated Learning was for professional development event. So they wanted to see that the event actually took place. So they want to see sign-in sheets, agendas, an invoice, and then the fact you actually had paid it.
And then the next couple things are about reimbursement reports. I mean, I looked at the 23-24 collaborative monitoring reports. They picked a bunch of different districts, different sizes, different demographics. But this was a common theme, reimbursement request. So if you're requesting money, you can request money that you've already paid. And then, any expense you expect to be paying out within 3 days after you receive the money from them. And then they noticed some instances where somebody had requested reimbursement for a grant, where the money had already been requested, or there had been a disbursement adjustment made, and that was a factor in the reimbursement request. And then they want these reimbursement requests to be done monthly. Actually, in the beginning, when they first started auditing these ESSER funds, the very first time that was like a desk review, one of the risk factor items was how frequently you file a reimbursement request. So I would get caught up with something probably as easy as this. So try to file those as quickly as possible. Luckily, we're getting kind of towards the end of these grants. And then another kind of theme here, and this is another one that I wouldn't want to get caught up for these because they're kind of easy and easy to know, would be like the fact that whatever's in your grant application, whatever expense codes they are, make sure that's the same thing that you use in the accounting software. And the same thing for revenue. Making sure for the appropriation or the revenue code, say, the code for ARP-ESSER and DWE's chart of accounts is 1, 2, 3, 4. I know that's not right, but make sure you use 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. And then the same thing with the revenue budget account, making sure that the amount of the award, if it's $100,000 for the current year award for, IDA, that's what you have in your accounting records. And the same thing with the appropriation, just make sure you're using their codes. For health benefits charged to the grant. So say, for example, it's ARP-ESSER, I'm charged to the grant, but only 20% of my salary is charged to the grant. Only 20% of my health benefits can be charged to the grant. And then they want you to subtract out the share of the employee's reimbursement to that. And then for Perkins, in this case, for example, let's say you have a maintenance contract. The maintenance contract is for calendar year 24, but the grant is from fiscal year 24. You can only charge the January through June 24 to the grant. It can be outside the grant period that you're charging. And then similar to the one I talked about on the first page about the Perkins grant, they want to make sure that the equipment you get is put into use. I guess there's a deadline on that. And then another thing that seemed to be in a bunch of the different reports were these policies regarding uniform guidance, which is for federal grants. So it's not even the fact that you have the policies that they want you to have, it's the fact that you have written procedures related to the policies too. So I won't go into the very specifics on that. And then another thing that we talked about in the past was something that they call confirming orders. So if you have a purchase order, the purchase order has to be dated prior to the invoice date. I know that's, it's very common to have these, especially with certain types of expenses, but that's one that is common. And then making sure if you're purchasing something over 25,000, that you're checking to make sure that the vendor that you're buying the items from is not debarred or suspended. And then once again, procurement seems to be a big thing they are looking at, so just make sure that you're using the correct procurement guidelines. I know Jim Shoup is an expert on this and has provided a lot of good information. I went to his seminar at the conference. So sometimes public school contract law is more restrictive and sometimes uniform guidance is more restrictive. So go with whatever is the more restrictive of the two. And then with the Title I Targeted Assistance Program, you want to make sure that if you have a targeted assistance program and you're buying some equipment or other types of, in this case, it was software licenses, subscription, that has to be used only for those children or that classroom for those kids. It can't be used for everyone. And then this had to do with school level reporting. I guess, I'm not that familiar with this. It seems as though there might be some district expenses and some might be school level expenses, and you just make sure that it's coded right. And this has to do with salaries again. So in this case, this is for staff that are only working part of the time, like summer work or after school work. In the board's minutes, there's specific things that you have to, for the staff, as we're gonna be doing that work, it needs to be delineated. Well, this one's for salaried employees. So for salaried employees, and I do have one on the next page that talks about the after school or beyond the school day. So all these different things they want to see, it's really kind of crazy. Count number, funding source, employee name, position title, annual salary, funding percentages. And then if for some reason you make a change, like Mrs. Jones was gonna charge $40,000 salary and it becomes 50 or becomes 30, then you have to go back in the minutes and modify that. And then another thing was, I noticed in a couple cases, if you're charging salary to the grant or other expenses in the grant, make sure that you're using the appropriate codes. Salaries can only be charged to salary accounts, and other expenses can only be charged to other expense codes, and you can't charge salaries to another expense code. I guess they found that in their review. And then the second one has to do with activities outside the normal work hours, and that lists all the items that they need to include in the minutes to authorize those people. And then actually it has to have an hourly rate and not to exceed amount as well. And then one of the things, it's not just tracking, the fixed assets are over 2,000. If you have any electronic equipment like Chromebooks, they want you to track that as well. And that's similar to that. And then inventory records, so anything that's a fixed asset you put in your inventory record, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. I've never seen this many items. I don't think you could keep it in your normal fixed asset records. I envision that you'd have to have like a spreadsheet that's like 20 columns long to put all these things in here. So I've never seen this level of detail requirements before. So once again, this is a theme about, if you have an expense, say, you want to charge supplies to one of the ARP grants, and you didn't have that in your original application, please amend your budget application for these type of changes. And then this one, the next one here has to do with, they bought some textbooks for a summer program. They had to show how those textbooks related to the summer program. They wanted that information. And there was a whole host of other ones that were more of a programmatic nature, and I didn't include those, but they are on DOE's website for a little light reading if you can't fall asleep some night. And then we thought it would be good to talk just a little bit, and we're certainly not experts on preschool education, but a lot more of you are having preschool education aid and programs over the last couple of years and in continuing to 25 as well. And I know the governor's expanding the funding available for that. So one of the things that you have to do is if you make transfers, there's a specific transfer form that you need to use. It's on DOE's website. And then it doesn't look like the one that we do for the general fund transfers. So, and what they're saying is you need county superintendent approval. I'm sure the county is really the one who looks at these. And then once that's approved, then you have to get board approval to ratify that. But these are the three categories here that are required, and we have tested these, and unfortunately, this has come up as a recommendation in our report. So these type of transfers require county superintendent approval. The first one is, say you had money in instructional supplies, and you want to make a transfer to not have money in there at all. It wipes out all the money that's in the original budget. You need a budget transfer for that, food budget transfer. The second one is if you move money from instruction to support services, you need an approved transfer. And then the third one is if you move any money into facilities acquisition out of instruction or support. And then the cutoff for that, submitting those transfer requests is May 31st. This is a duplication or like just an emphasis of the fact that you need to do these transfers. And then one that I wasn't aware of, but when I was looking at the transfer form requirements, I also saw these carryover fund requirements. So if for some reason you need to use some of the carryover in your budget from the prior year and it's changed from what was in the original budget, it's hard to know. I mean, when you're doing, I'm sure your application for the next year and you're estimating what your carryover is going to be and it's during budget process, you're not going to know exactly what you're going to have left over from the current year. So there might be a need for these type of transfers. And then the last item we just wanted to talk about a little bit, or I'm going to talk about, is rod grids. Some of you are very familiar with these, some of you might be newer VAs or just never might have had one. So this is more the accounting side of it. So the rod grants, they need to be recorded in Fund 30. That's what DOE says, Fund 30 is where they need to be. So the funding sources for the rod grants, you're gonna have a state grant and you're also gonna have a local share. And the local share is gonna be funded generally by capital reserve or capital outlay, not maintenance reserve. And then once again, like the theme that I was talking about with the cloud monitoring, make sure that you're using the right revenue code. So I put them up here, the rod grant state code 303255. And then 305200 from either the money that's coming from capital reserve or capital outlay. And then also what's gonna happen is the money's gonna be charged off against your general fund budget. So I have the two line items coming from capital reserve or capital outlay that you would charge off. So you charge it off in full. If, for example, if you had the money, say, in construction services and Fund 12, you need to transfer the money from construction services to most likely the capital outlay transfer to capital projects fund line. And that may require county superintendent approval. So just make sure that for the appropriations that you have that set up exactly as what the budgeted amount is. Or in the approved application, and then the next year, when you have any money left over, make sure you record again, because I believe in most systems. Fund 30 doesn't roll over, you have to set it up, so just make sure you set up the right amount, because you want to make sure you're not overextending, or you want to have the ability to spend all the funding available. So I've done a lot of talking, if anybody has any questions, would be most happy to answer that. Okay, thank you.
So for once in my life, because we're being recorded today, I did not interject as much as I normally. So I just wanted to comment on Heidi's section about single audit and that the threshold is increasing. And I just wanted to emphasize that that's not the grant awards that you have, that's the amount that you expend in a given fiscal year, but just to be clear. And then with that, the exercise that we have to go through to figure out which programs we need to review. We had our peer review back in May. We feel your pain in terms of, dotting I's, crossing T's. I think every board presentation that I go to, I like the board to recall what this whole process is about. And so we're doing a financial statement audit. We're doing a yellow book audit. And we are also yellow book and or single audit if you spend above those thresholds. And then we also are, doing an audit in compliance with certain DOE regulations. So it is very comprehensive, but again, I will iterate that if you do have federal single audit, state single audit, most districts do have, because you all receive that much state aid. The compliance supplements, while they give us additional procedures, they're never as extensive as the monitoring. So Heidi said she never saw anything so intense on the fixed assets. We warned that when the answer grants came in because, you know, they're inherently risky because they're new programs and districts are not familiar with the requirements. That's why for the last 3 years, we have included that, beware, 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 and you're spending on answers. And thanks to the people in this room who have shared their own experiences over the last 3 years, that we're able to communicate that to others. So in terms of the survey, thank you, everyone. Back in the beginning of time, I can remember a client saying to me, something about an employee being on the phone, and I said, I really appreciate you telling me that. Because if you didn't, I wouldn't know, and I couldn't remedy the situation. So I think last year was a little bit difficult. You know, the requirements just keep coming out, the information is not available. And I think Valerie is very good at counting the number of days that we have to get school audits done. So we're talking June 30th to, we're still saying beginning of December. So even municipal audits have a 6-month period, we have less than that. Of course, the time of year is when people are on vacations for the first 2 or 3 months of that small narrow period. But we do this because we want to do it. We're very dedicated to it, and we really do want to produce good results. So without, I see my slides got a little screwed up because I was the last one to turn in my slides. Is anybody surprised about that? So I just tried to do the 1-page summary. What were the comments? You know, where are areas for improvement? Definitely, last year in the end of November and December, it was very, very difficult trying to figure out how to get everything processed in a short period of time. And we don't want that to happen again. And so we're trying to keep the communication, and that's really what the results found. That it could be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/3 of our clients responded. And so we were very pleased to find that by and large, that our clients are very happy with the way we're doing things. There's always room for improvement. We know that. And I think, you know, we had a new client last year. Let us know, do you like us to communicate with you on a daily basis when we're in the field? Or do you want to have a wrap up on, you know, the day or two before? How do you want us to communicate the information that we need? Do you want it all at once? Do you want it fun by fun? Whatever you tell us, we will do our best to accommodate. So with that, we definitely have found throughout the firm that we haven't had the opportunity to communicate this to our whole entire team. But the whole idea is that we communicate with you. I don't know, when we did this meeting last year, I knew that it was going to be a difficult year. It certainly played out to be that, and then a lot. So, talked about my initial ideas that I share with this team. This team is amazing. They're really the brains. I'm just the one bringing up all the ideas, and they're finding all the solutions. We do it together. But being able to say, what can we do while we're in this somewhat holding pattern in the first months of the audit season? And that was one of the responses to the survey said, can you come and look at ASSA DRTRS when it's being submitted? That it's become such an impossibility, but on the flip side, we said, okay, so we have new hires, we have existing staff, we have interns, and we want to give them something productive to do. So we should be contacting you in the next week or two to talk about, and I think they already have started, requesting ASSA and DRTRS to at least get our selection in place and be able to streamline that process for you. And we talked about different documents that we need up front. And so I was surprised to be in the field and finding that we didn't have budget for a particular school district. And when I asked the in charge, how are you finding out what they're appropriating the next year, they were finding it on time. So there are some things that can definitely be done at the beginning, which is finding out, and going through peer review, we know we need to, those fraud questionnaires are for you and different individuals in your district to let us know where an area where you think there might be risks that we should be looking at. We're supposed to be planning our audit and gearing it toward those responses. More often than not, there are none, but if there are some, we need to have that documentation at the beginning. Again, with the systems right up, our staff are there, they generally know who is doing what, but it's really important to have that documented. So I told you, when it comes to school district audits and peer reviews for the auditor, it's all about having it written and spelled out so that when somebody comes in to review it, they don't have to ask questions, it's all on paper. The other thing was that, any of these documents, and again, Valerie and this team put together the packets. And that was one of the first questions, but it seems pretty, wide scale that everybody likes having the packets. We try our best to identify the software and the names of those reports. But if you have a need, or if you would like to have someone meet with you on the first day or before they come in for field work, need to make that known. We're going to try to designate an info person for each team, and you always know at the end of the day, where does the buck stop? It stops with the partner. So if you're not getting an answer, and I know sometimes I'm guilty, and I'll look back at my people that we try to get you the best answer. So sometimes you might have to wait a little bit, but again, if you communicate with the partner, we'll definitely address the issue, and I hope there are no issues. But we haven't disseminated that with our group yet, so we'll figure out who it is, but you will know that if you're sending information to us, that we're gonna have one person who's responsible for taking it in and getting it to the people, so that we are not requesting information more than once or several times. We're just gonna try to be more together in our process. We're gonna try to avoid interruptions when they're in the field, and just try to work it from both ends, that we're not being intrusive. And I think that's what their mantra is. They don't want to be coming to you every 5 minutes. Some teams might be coming to you every 5 minutes, I'm not sure, but we really try to control that so that we're not completely overtaking you and your staff while we're there. And then, of course, the biggest thing that we knew right away is the aftermath. Once we're getting through, information's coming out, how do we continue with the audits that we're doing? And how do we finish the ones that we started? And so knowing what we're dealing with is half the battle, so we feel good about that. Last year, we talked about having certain people dealing with certain functions of that, but we always have to think about people learning and growing, and we definitely will do that. So the biggest takeaway today is once the team leaves the field, we're gonna try our best to make sure that they have let you know everything they need. Things do come up. There might be something on single audit, or we make a determination, and then when it goes to Heidi as quality control, she says, you know what? I think you really need to select this program. Doesn't happen all the time. It's very, very minimal, but it's good to happen. But we are committed to getting things finished and getting them in a timely manner, and then deciding what would be the most appropriate way to communicate with our VAs in terms of, okay, we left the district on September 30th. What is the next step? Can we communicate on a weekly basis? If it's a matter of the statewide information isn't out, that we would indicate that, but we are going to give you a much better expectation of how we're doing, and not just walk away and then weeks later come back and say, well, we're behind. We're gonna try and be behind. So that's why we're saying we need these things. So Valerie is, I said to her, how can we say we really need to have these perfunctory things up front that will take care of so many of the issues? And she said, well, I have a list that's all highlighted in red. And when I looked at it, It's a lot. And so if you go to, we developed our own list of materials that are needed, but if you look at the NJDOE list, it's very grand, it's very extensive. You know, we try to cut to the chase and make it make sense, and it's still very voluminous, so. Again, if you think of something in a moment when you're going through your audit that you think would be helpful, we appreciate your comments on that as well. So, I think that's anything. So, are we moving on to Brian and cybersecurity? And, okay, pass it over to Brian Cup.
Okay, my turn.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We're a little ahead of schedule, so you get to hear from me more, right? Okay, who's heard my presentation about IT security and fraud prevention before? Couple people? Okay, great, because it hasn't changed much since the last time I gave it, so. But it'll be a good refresher for you. Okay. Okay. So who has IT security training and prevention in place right now at their district? Hands high, so I can see them. Okay, great. A number of you. If you didn't raise your hand, that's really something we should look into. Because the weakest link at any company or district or government office is the end user. Now, usually when these malware attacks happen, it's because somebody clicked something that they weren't supposed to. Somebody emailed something that they shouldn't have, or they opened a document, or they put in a thumb drive. But there's a joke about why they can't make bear-proof garbage cans, right? Because there's a big overlap between the smartest bears and the least smart people. Come on, that landed better when I practiced it. So we can't protect our systems 100% because they need to be used, right? We can't prevent people from using the system because it prevents them from doing their job. So staff are the number one way to help prevent, staff trainings are the number one way to help prevent security breaches. Because we are the weakest link as the end users. So I've updated this information. So the US loses over $12.5 billion a year to phishing and its variants in 2023. Now that's just reported. So I'm sure there's plenty of circumstances where, you know, Grandma Jane went and bought, you know, gift cards and sent them to somebody who was saying that they needed gift cards to get their grandson out of jail. We've all heard those stories. So that's not even included in these figures. The most vulnerable part of the company is obviously its individual users. And no matter how much of security a company has, they cannot separate their employees from their system or they can't do their jobs. So the most common phishing attempts or malware attempts are phishing and email texts that are hard to be distinguished from actual ones. Planted USB drives, fake QR codes. I know during COVID, you know, all the menus got switched to QR codes, so nobody was touching things. But now, sometimes you see there's QR codes on a phone booth or QR codes on a bus. Do not scan those QR codes. They will bring you to malicious sites, they will capture your information. So just because, oh, I wonder what this QR code does, please do not scan it. And also scam calls and text centers. So we've all gotten scam calls, you know, we used to get them all the time. When we had landlines, and now it's starting to happen a lot on our cell phones too. And I'm sure everyone's gotten a text saying that, oh, your Apple account has been blocked because you haven't paid, or you need to click this and confirm your Amazon delivery. But they're not from Amazon, they're not from Apple, they're just texts from people trying to get your information. So all these breach attempts and phishing attempts have become more and more commonplace, and that's why it's so much important for you to put emphasis on training and becoming knowledgeable about what these things are. So scammers can be very clever and they're very persistent. So if you happen to have two-factor authentication set up and you get a notification and it keeps saying, hey, click approve, they'll do it for hours to try to get you to say approve, so it stops. You can't. Because then they're into your system, they're into whatever you were protecting with that two-factor authentication. So they will be persistent, so you need to be persistent too. A total of 98 K-12 districts had their data posted on leaked sites by ransomware groups during 2023. According to this malware research site. So that is nationwide. So there's probably a lot more than that than what's actually reported there. So we like to use, or in the past, we've used Nova4. I think it's a good resource for all of you because they do have some free options on there. They do phishing reply tests, so you can put in your company name or the district name, and you can upload a list of email addresses and develop a fake email to send to your employees, either just in the business office or the admin office or the entire district, and say, hey, here's the new vacation policy, click here to see it, and you get a report of who clicks it. So you can see who's not following obvious IT prevention procedures. So 91% of successful data breaches start with a spear phishing attack. Spear phishing attack is the same as a phishing attack, except it's very concentrated. So I've gotten an email before that says, Chuck Aaron, President, Mount Olive Chamber of Commerce, and Chuck's the President of Mount Olive Chamber, I'm the treasurer. He's like, hey, I need you to make a transfer. We have to do a wire transfer to pay this vendor for the event tonight. And we did have an event tonight. We had our awards presentation. It was some food vendor, which was strange because they provided food, but I'm like, okay. So they had looked up the president and the treasurer and our contact information on our website, saw that there was an event tonight, saw the name of the event, and they're like, oh, maybe they'll want to pay me for catering instead of the caterer. So I got an email and I'm like, why would I wire anything, Chuck? We do things by check. I hate doing things by check because it's not, 1992, but we do it that way. So why would I need a wire thing? And then I clicked it, deleted it, blocked it, it's done. Chuck's also got an email, text supposedly from me that says, hey, I need you to Venmo this for the chamber. And he texted me back and was like, he later on called me actually. It's like, we don't even have a Venmo. Why would I need to Venmo this to you? Chuck, I didn't text you. That was a trap. Don't click on it. Don't Venmo that person. So these things happen all the time. And that was just in the past 6 months that happened twice to our chamber, just trying to get the information off the website. So I'm sure that there's plenty of other experiences that you all had where these things have happened too. So they can gain all this information, do a spear phishing attack, which is a targeted attack using the information from your website, from your employees' Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. They know people's faces, they can see their names, their addresses, their hometowns, where they grew up. All that information can easily be obtained now from the internet, and it can damage your organization's reputation, and they gain access to your system, which we really don't want to do. So phishing attempts, I just went over a couple of examples of that. So cyber attack tries to trick people to sharing your information. A simulated phishing attempts would be, so you need to train your end users on how to reveal a phishing attempt. So certain things you can do is hover over a link in an email. If it says, click here for your PDF, you hover over it and it's not bringing you to a PDF file. Okay, that's strange. You can hover over an email address. If it doesn't say bk@nisivoccia.com, Okay, well, why would it say bko@gmail.com or bko.cu.nisivoccia.com or something like that? They can spoof the email addresses right in the emails. So you need to learn how to check for the validity of those emails. A lot of times there are text and grammar errors, because these things are often farmed out overseas. And they usually don't have a formal signature at the bottom of the email either. So these are some interesting attacks that we've seen. There are also things that our IT department likes to trick us with. So updated financial policies, a Zoom meeting that started, I've gotten that one before, like, I don't have a Zoom meeting scheduled, why am I invited to this? And it was a trick to try to get you to click the Zoom link. HR, please verify your banking information. DocuSign, I got one yesterday from DocuSign, saying that I need to sign something for Deloitte. And webmail security alert, so there's plenty of opportunities for them to confuse you and get it tricky. A favorite one that I've seen in the past is click this link for a video feed of who's been stealing lunches from the kitchen. And stuff like that. So sometimes it's interesting things that you would like, oh, that sounds like something I would want to see, but you know it's fake. So don't. So if you take one thing away from my presentation here, it's just think before you click. Okay, so paper documents are also a risk. It's important that you shred anything that you're done with and eliminate any exposure to that. Official documents, contracts, any training materials. Anything on an official form that they can maybe copy your letterhead to use as an example for something else should be destroyed. And when reviewing your sensitive information, remember to be aware of your surroundings. I think we just had a quick black out so the cameras are resetting, the lights on. Be aware of your surroundings, shoulder surfers. Somebody can just be right behind you. You don't have to worry about clicking links. Somebody can just see what you're doing. And then once you no longer need the information, make sure you destroy it. Antivirus and managed detection response software. It's important that you have those and that they're updated. Well, we use P2 Windows Defender for our AV. It provides real-time protection and zero-day attack protection. IT also receives alerts from the MDR on any suspicious activity. If they see that somebody's connecting from Malaysia or anywhere else outside the United States, it automatically blocks it, they get a notice. So now we actually have a policy in place where we have to let them know when you're going outside the country, because we have instances where partners are outside the country trying to check their email and they can't get in because they're getting blocked, but they should be getting blocked because they didn't let anybody know that they're going outside the country, just like we used to do with our credit cards, which you don't have to do anymore, but you let them know that we're outside the country. Patches and updates. So you know those annoying little updates you get on your phone every couple of months? Those are important. They update the security on your system. They prevent intrusions. Update, perform those updates and reboot. When your PC at work or your laptop says, hey, there's this update, don't hit postpone day after day after day. Hit the update, reboot your computer. You should also be rebooting your computer every day too. Shut it down at the end of the day, start it at the beginning. I know everyone doesn't do that, at least do it once a week, please. So it'll help prevent, it clears your cookies. So the cookies are when the information is saved on internet forms, it helps clear those as well. Everyone should have a disaster recovery plan. We know we've seen a couple instances where some government agencies have gotten hacked and the information is stolen and ransomed. So then they can't get it back for a certain amount of time between when the insurance company pays whoever, or they have to get their backup up. You should have a plan in place, which doesn't have to be that expensive, just who we're going to contact, what we're going to do, what order these things are, who we have to alert, whether it's a superintendent and the board and everything. So what we have to do to get our information back up and get back up and running. Offsite backups are important, so is the cloud. Almost everything is now on the cloud rather than an offsite backup, but I do remember when Dave used to, at our office, have to take these big, like VHS sized discs from the server room every week or whatever, that he has to take them home and you rotate them. Okay, secure password manager. Who here uses an Excel to keep track of their passwords? Good. Who here writes their passwords on a piece of paper and puts it underneath their keyboard? Exactly. So please don't do that. Remember your passwords or use a secure password manager. I have some examples of, there's Keeper, LastPass, we use one login. It's usually a two-factor system, so you log into your password manager on your computer, usually once a day. And it'll then send a notification to an app on your phone, not a text. It'll be an app, you have to hit yes, you log in. And then it'll manage your passwords for the day. And then you don't even have to log into certain accounts. It'll keep your Gmail information in there, so it'll automatically fill that out. It'll keep your SFSAC login information, which is now gov. Whatever the new website is. So use a password, a password manager rather than a Excel or a Post-it note next to your monitor or anything like that. Passwords, the best passwords are complex passwords. They are longer than 16 characters. Change your password every 90 days. And don't just go from password exclamation 1 to password exclamation 2. That doesn't really solve the problem. So there's actually a number of studies of the number of PIN numbers for your ATM cards. Anything with double digits in it is much more likely to be a password. 1, 2, 3, 4, anything in sequence is much more likely to be a password, or reverse sequence. Also birth dates, so anything that starts with a 0 and then or a 1 is more likely to be a password for your ATMs too. So have fun with that information, but you know, it's important to remember to update all your passwords. We talked about multi-factor authentication. I know it's annoying to have to get those texts to log in or the notification from the app. But at least we don't have those silly little dongles anymore that have the rotating codes to get into certain bank accounts. So the process is improving. Also, if you do get a text that's supposed to be multi-factor authentication and you did not submit for that, you can alert your credit card company, you can alert the bank, whatever you're logging into, to make sure that then they will freeze your account, reset your passwords, and give you new login information. Does anybody have any questions about fraud detection and prevention? Does anybody have any fun stories that they'd like to share?
We were at North Jersey and South Jersey Roadshow, so Brian's there talking about this and that, and I was the naysayer, you know, making you all laugh, but really truly, I thought the presentation that you had was all about the distractions, not to get so angry. Because in our firm, they would say, well, you know, the biggest violators are the partners, and kind of, you know, saying people with more experience were the ones who accounting experience were the ones who were screwing it up all the time. And I said, I don't think that's fair, but I would be out trying to respond to emails. I would do something on the fly, and every single time you act hastily, it bites you. So I said, all right, none of that, none of that. So you might find that responses might be a little bit slower. And in this profession of auditing, we are supposed to be cautiously skeptical. And so now I am like so bent the other way. I'm like, okay, I don't trust anyone, anything when it comes to email, because I do not want to be that person. And so as Brian said, we used No Before. I think people enjoyed that because it's probably 10 or 15-minute clips. It was like watching a series on TV. It was the espionage. It was all the, you know, people enjoyed that. But in terms of time during a day, I'm like, let's just cut to the chase. When we first got the initial emails about look for the spelling, hover, I'm like, oh my God, who in the world has time for this? It looks like the right thing, But I'm constantly looking at it saying, I don't think so, and they always say, it doesn't look right, you know, we use our TIG wolf now. It's like 3 to 5 minutes, it's just short and sweet, it's not a big, you know, soap opera story, it's just, more succinct to help you be aware. But, one of the presentations someone did was saying that it's always when you're not devoting your full attention, and I think at this point in time, we probably learned that, and it's okay by me if you're gonna, you know, take a moment and determine if it's real or if it's not real. And that's very important. The other thing is, I always like to see Brian said they don't have real signatures. So I can't tell you how many clients I go to, and I'm like, oh, what is their office phone number? I can't find it because they don't put a signature, well, they'll say their name and their title, but it won't have contact information, so. But even within our firm, I had someone in our invoicing department send me a purchase order from the school district, and I'm like, she's sending me that, so of course, I go outside the device and I text her and say, did you just send me a voucher from a client? She's like, yes, I did. And I was like, that's interesting. But just good to always be cautious. The whole passwords, I mean, I know we have to use 15 digits, pain in the neck every time we have to change it. What am I going to change it to? They say phraseology is better, just have a sentence or phrase that you can use, but hopefully, you know, in your organizations, you have IT people, you have a big contingent, you could have hundreds of employees, so I'm sure it's an everyday concern. We're up to 125, 150 firm, depending, because we hire temporary people for tax season, we have interns in the summer, so our number of employees, but really do like the people that we have, and I think that in school districts, you have a combination of people with coming from different angles that sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience to be more secure as it comes. So I think at the end of our presentation, we had some resources. Put those in there, you want to talk about them? And we were gonna have Damien here from Wealth, but I don't.
So what we did is, there was a couple of sections that we decided we weren't sure if we were gonna cover, not cover, go over, they're kind of repetitive from previous years. So we kind of put them all in your package as some resources is what we call them. Alright, so we did talk about, a couple of things we want to talk about is like board secretaries and treasurers reports, a couple of those things, because. Make sure that a few things to do when you're looking at the end of the year, one of the things we always say is make sure you look at your board secretary's report, does it seem reasonable? Look at your treasurer's report, we can't tell you how many times we get things, so the treasurer's report and the board secretary's report don't agree. Usually it happens a lot at the end of the year because you're making adjustments, things have been communicated yet to the treasurer and back and forth, but if those adjustments. Let's try to make sure that we can, at the end of the day, we know that those two reports agree, because we don't wanna have a situation where we end up with something that doesn't work, and then we're looking at entries, and then we can't give you a journal entry because your records are right, then we're trying to give entries to the treasurer. So we just wanna make sure on those things. Same thing with your board secretary's report. Few things, as you're getting ready to close, remember, obviously, make sure that it's your final, that you're giving us to audit. Review district tax and receivable. Many times what happens is that number doesn't always end up correct on a board secretary's report. Are all of your receivables on your balance sheet something that you could have in your total, that you could give us a list? Can you provide us with a list and say this is our receivables and it's made up of all of these things? So we ask for anything like that. You might have reminders, a few things that everyone does have forgotten over the years. Debit credit memos from the DOE. How many times those entries don't get recorded, you get the memo, you think you're gonna do it, you forget to go back, post the those debit credit memos. The TPA social security information, or extraordinary aid. Extraordinary aid is another one, you get that information just to remind everybody, you get that receivable, if you don't even know really what you're getting yet. So you're gonna have to go back in and backfill a receivable. Always remember that does get reported as of it'll get reported as of June 30th of 24, the money that you have yet to receive. Just when you're looking at your boards, look at your interfunds. Do we have any interfunds between two funds and do they equal each other? It's always a good cross check. Looking at if you're giving us a closed set of board secretaries reports, obviously all the budgetary accounts should be closed. So we shouldn't be seeing any 301s or a scrap or tell you how many times we get them and when they're closed. Somehow the interest on the capital reserve that was budgeted never got closed. We always see there's a few stragglers on those. Obviously, the encumbrances that you're providing us, if the board secretary's reported 73, 74 say. This is my encumbrance, do I have a report that agrees to that report? We obviously audit that so we need to make sure that you have all the encumbrances and are those encumbrances that are now in 753, 754 were originally in your encumbrance 602 before you closed. And ensure that your capital reserve, maintenance reserve, tuition reserve, emergency reserves, obviously you have cash associated with those. Does the cash equal the reserve? Be surprised a lot of times, sometimes that doesn't happen, and those are common entries we have to make to correct those balances. I think those were the few that we were like, they're just refreshers, we put them in your packet, because not all the time do they show up. Is there any questions that we can answer? I know, like you said, this is an audit process that you go through once a year. Yeah, you've done it so many times, but you know, we're trying to be a little more collaborative. We're trying to make sure that it gets a little easier because it's getting harder, I think. The more and more information they're pushing towards us to include, the more and more information you're all dealing with in your office on a daily basis, kind of makes no time for the audit itself. There's no time to actually digest and look. So, you know, like we said, Kathy had said initially, we were going to probably, one of the things we were gonna talk about is designating one person in the team. Everybody has, there's our partner, you can always get a hold of us. There is an in-charge person, but that in-charge person is doing a million things and reviewing and going through. So we were thinking of that second person is going to be, so that if you're getting emails requesting documents, we really are going to try to have it all come from that same central person. And that way, it'll just CC the partner, CC the in-charge, so that we know it's happening. Because I think one of the biggest things that we did in the survey and the takeaway was we were a lot of miscommunication, asking for information, we don't want to keep asking. You know, we want to have a central location for information. And as you go through your information in your reports, if your list is not compliant, that's not what I call that, if that's a report, just tell us, we'll update it so that next year we can give you those documents. I want to be able to give you the documents properly. And I think that's it. Are we good? One thing
I do want to add is that, if you can provide us access to your system, whether it's remotely or on a laptop on site, I think it will save, you know, both of us a lot of time so that we're not coming to you every hour and say, hey, I got this report, can you give me this? Hey, I need detail for this, can you do that? So if you can provide us access, that I think will save us a lot. I mean, we have access to some of our clients and I think we find it very helpful. So if you can make that happen, that will, I think, make the process a lot smoother. Thank you.
Now, I want to introduce someone on a team that puts this all together for us and takes all our nonsense day in and day out, and that is Katie Bishop. And she's standing back here dressed in floral. But we just throw a lot at her and we make her make it work, and she does very well. So I think it's a follow through. We'll have Katie send something out, give us a takeaway, give us something that we can address. We should be setting up the schedule for the audits. I did see one comment where someone wasn't aware when the audit team was coming, and I said, oh my God, how in the world did that ever happen? Last year, when it was very difficult, I mean, we set up our teams to go out in July. We're kind of trying to figure out the best use of our staff, because everybody wants to be efficient. We don't want to waste time. We talked about, sharing files, and if there's 150 documents that you have to upload, can you upload them? Can you click off what you've uploaded and it reduces the list? We did use share file. It takes time and energy to deal with that, and I know some of the teams just said it's just harder to deal with that than it is to just provide a list. A lot of times, if there's no changes in the business office VA and the assistant VA and the audit team, or at least, you know, the partner, we do have transitions through our firm. That makes it easier because we kind of have our rhythm and we know what we're expecting, but changes every day, right? That's what happens. And so when there is change, we try to hone in on that and try to establish, you know, budget preferences. But please, we'll give Kate some questions to throw out and give us the feedback. But I would say in the next couple of weeks, maybe 3, you'll have the list, but we should be contacting the schools to find out what order we're going in. You know, we always say we have 80-something schools and we have 10, maybe even 12 teams now, because we have been successful in getting new hires and really good staff too. So when you take all that together, the in-charges typically have the same account. Some of them get moved around for various reasons. We have the best laid plans. Something might go wrong on our end, or one of our clients has something unforeseeable that they can't change. So maybe a week that they had planned for us to come in to do the audit. We have always had great success and very little bumps in the road in terms of rescheduling. So please, you know, something comes up, it's inevitable, right? And so we just, as a team, come together and say, okay, how are we gonna fix this? How are we gonna keep our staff productive, keep your staff productive, and try to minimize the extension of time. So, they did it all. And then, if we could introduce, this is Valerie's son, Tim. Sometimes I call him Mike. That's his father. And we have Parker. And, we just have a great setup of team. Whenever you ask anybody in Nisivoccia, can you help out? You know, brand new and, really want to be part of something new and different, so. We mean that sincerely. We won't be holding these that we didn't consider to be important, and your feedback is very, very, very just. Help us find out what we don't know. Most of it we do know, but there are things we don't know. So thank you all, really appreciate it.
I'd also like to introduce my partner in crime, Caitlin Orton. There's a principal who Caitlin. And now, lunch is ready.
Thank you.